Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our free Forex training. And today we shall shift gears and try and learn um, what I call the price cycle. Okay. And I'll start that by jumping straight to the charts, as you can see, and try and share with you what my thoughts are and how I trade and how we take advantage of this notion of price cycle. Now, we are going to the charts, and it doesn't matter which chart, which market you normally go for. Like I said, normally I use Euro USD, but you can use any, it doesn't matter which one. Okay. So, and again, whichever time frame. So, if you're using 1 minute, that's fine. If you're using a 1 hour, that's fine too. Um, but like I said, I'm gonna use what I normally use. But the principle is still the same. Okay, so I'll get down to the 1 minute and use that for the purposes of our class today. All right. So price cycle. Um, for many of you, maybe who have a bit of mathematics background or physics, a cycle is basically almost like an oscillation. Like to make a complete circle. If you take an orange and cut it into quarter, you know, and maybe, or you try and draw uh, the circumference of an orange or a cycle, there'll be like four quadrants. The four quadrants would make a full circle. Okay. Uh, so similarly, when you talk about price cycle, we are saying four swings. Basically, as it goes down and then up and then down and then up, you know, essentially it forms cycles. All right. Um, for the purposes of explanation and for this particular class, this is what I'm going to call a cycle. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chart here. And, okay, okay, that's not what I want. Yes. So when the chart starts from maybe a low from here, okay, to that high, okay, all right, that's a complete cycle for the price, okay, and then maybe it starts again from there and comes down again, okay, that's another one. Then it starts from there and then goes up again, all right, and then starts again and goes up. So in these moves, in these little price cycles, okay, when we are talking about trading and especially scalping, we are very interested on the length of each, okay, how much pips it's covering. So if we remove those things, okay, and try and almost measure them, because we are using 1 minute, let's see. So if you remove them and you measure them, just measuring tools, okay, let's see what is the average. So the average length is about that's about 7 pips, and this one is 12. So 7 plus 12, that's 19, almost 20. And this one is 10.9, and this one is 13. So 10.9, 13, and this time, so if you do an average, it almost comes to about 10. You know, again, just a rough figure for the purposes of our explanation. Okay, it's about 10 pips. So basically, we're saying the move from down here to there is almost 10 pips. Well, actually, not 10, it's actually more. This is what this one was. 12. Okay, 12. So if it's 12, then when I want to trade, I take an average of maybe the last four, or five cycles, okay, and try and figure out what would be my take profit. So again, if I took like the last move from here to the last high, to the last low, okay, and then you measure it, you'll find that it is about 10 pips. Okay, so it seems like our average price move from the low to a high is almost 10 pips, which then to us begs the question, when you are going into your scalping or your trades, how many pips should you push for if you know that the average is about 10? Well, the simple answer would be like, okay, why not maximize it? You want to take your whole 10 pips. Well, that is true, that's easy to say. But if you draw a box, let's say, and assume that this is 10 pips each side, or each, okay, the box. Let's see if we can measure and see if it's 10 pips. Well, slightly more than 10 pips. Okay, so I'm going to reduce it. Okay, that could be a measure of 10 pips, I think, or slightly less. Okay, let's, yep, yep. So this is averagely the kind of price cycle we're talking about. Now, when we start scalping, what happens is the market doesn't do the whole 10 pips at once. If you look, it doesn't do it all at once. Okay, it doesn't. It's very rarely does the whole thing at once. So as you can see from here to there, okay, from here, well, a little more than that. From there, a little more than that. Okay, if you go down there, okay, slightly more than that. Okay, like that. So what I normally do is, if you stop and think for a minute, statistically, okay, if you do a diagonal line from here and you want to go all the way there, okay, let's assume that this journey will be 100%. That length is 100%. Okay, hypothetically, if that is 100%, that's what you want. Okay, and as you go up, basically the probability in terms of hitting your target, if you start here and your goal is to reach there, okay, in the forex market, of course, if you reach there, that would be the whole 10 pips that you want. Okay, but as we know, forex market, what happens? The reality is the probability, if this is your starting point and this is your goal, all right, at this point you're sure this is point X. And let me draw, okay, this is point X. If it's point X and we're going to point Y over here, point X is, right now, it's at 0. But the probability of you going and reaching that point at the top decreases rapidly the higher you go. Would you agree with that? Okay. In other words, if the market is trying to come from this point to the lowest point, of course, from here, as it starts moving, it's a journey. And there are no guarantees in Forex. It will keep going down. And yes, in many occasions, some occasions, it will go and reach its target. But for you as a trader, would you be shooting for the whole hog? So when I say you scalp or you trade and get little bit, from the market, little and continuously, you take little bites, then for me, the scalping that we do assumes that the probability from here to that point X decreases with time. Hence, the probability of getting only the first chunk here is much higher than that 50% point there. And this 50% point is even higher than 70% point. In other words, if you decided that you want to do only, let's say, 2 pips, 2 pips would be somewhere around here. So I'll come here and we say the 2 pips will start from there, but it will only go up to there. Okay. But if you want 5 pips, again, this is a 1 minute chart, then the 5 minute, the 5 pips, sorry, would be from there till about there. All right. So this is 2 pips. This is 5 pips. Okay. And let me even get another one, and let's call it 10 pips. Okay. And our third one is 10 pips. Again, starting from there, and that is 10 pips. So when you are trading, logically, which of these three is more likely to be hit? Is more likely, again, if you're putting trades, and these are your take profits. Your first take profit is 2 pips. Your next take profit is 5 pips, and the third take profit is 10 pips. Which of these three has a higher probability of being hit? In other words, if this is all I want from the market, and maybe I even put it down here, okay, which one is likely to be hit first? Well, your guess is as good as mine. The 2 pips is easier to achieve than the 5 pips. Don't you agree? Again, in terms of percentage, okay, this has a higher percentage of being hit than the 5 pips, and of course the 10 pips. So when people shoot for 10 pips, again, on a scalping trade or even other trades, then the probability of that one being hit when you know the price cycle is or can be very low, extremely low. Whereas a smaller portion of that price cycle is more realistic, like taking half of that price cycle, that is realistic. Or better yet, an even smaller portion, like in this case. This is almost like a quarter. All right. And so for me, when I'm trading, then once I kind of figure the price cycle, if it's 10 pips, I know in my mind that a quarter of that is about 2.5. So if I shoot for 2, I am quite within a very good range. And when I start trading, each time I get 2 pips, okay, I actually bank those and wait for another opportunity for another 2 pips. So each time I get my 2 pips, then I move my target, not my target, but my rectangle again. Okay, so I've got my 2 pips. Then I want another 2 pips. Okay, again, I keep moving and do another 2 pips. So from here to down here, I might end up entering the trades several times. I might have one setup up here when it comes and retraces. The second setup would be here. Okay, third setup would probably be here. That's 4, and maybe a fourth setup would be here, and those would be each of 2 pips. Okay, so the first setup, I wish I could draw this differently. Okay, fine. That's my first setup. Okay, then I think I'm going to use this and make them smaller. Second setup will be there. Okay, I'll use this one. Third setup would be there, and my fourth setup would be right there. And actually, if you think about it, there might be even a fifth setup. So the move from here to the bottom here, okay, whereas people would be shooting for the 10 pips, I would have gone for the 2 pips there, and that could probably have been 10 trades of 2 pips. So that will give me like 20 pips. 10 times 2 is about 20, yes. And then from here again, up here to there would be another 2 pips. Again, I'll put like 10 trades. So 10 times 2, another 20 pips. Okay, then I wait for it to come up again and then go for another 2 pips. So again, it's 2 pips times 10, that's about 20 pips. And then this last opportunity here again, when it comes back, I jump in again and go for 2 pips. So it's 20, another 20 pips. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. I can easily do like 80 pips in this move over here by only going for the small number of pips, despite the price cycle being about 10 pips. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this short and sweet, and I will open it for questions right now. Questions and answers. Okay, questions.